Listen up, high performers. We're doing a strategic briefing today on something that's going to absolutely redefine how you look at success, meaning, and purpose in our modern world. We're unpacking the core philosophy of Mark Manson's groundbreaking work, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. We're going to uncover the profound wisdom behind selective caring and radical responsibility. So if you're tired of that relentless pressure to be perfect and you're ready to cut through the noise to find out what actually drives meaningful success, let's get right into this explainer.
Really think about this for a second. What if literally everything you've been taught about success, happiness, and self-improvement is just completely backwards? We live in this hyper-connected world that constantly bombards us with a single exhausting message: want more, feel more, be more. We're told we've got to always be positive, always stay highly motivated, always be hustling toward that next big milestone. This exhausting hustle culture basically tells us that if you aren't smiling through the grind, well, something must be fundamentally wrong with you. But what if that toxic positivity is exactly what's holding you back? What if the relentless pursuit of feeling good is actually the very thing making you miserable?
Okay, let's dive into this. Manson calls this trap the feedback loop from hell. And here's exactly how it works. You feel anxious about a major project, maybe a looming deadline, or a tough conversation you need to have. That's a completely normal human reaction, right? But then, because you've been conditioned to believe you should always feel confident and good, you start feeling anxious about the fact that you're feeling anxious. You beat yourself up over it. Suddenly, you feel terrible about feeling anxious about feeling anxious. Sound familiar? It's incredibly exhausting. Our modern obsession with unyielding positivity is actually making us worse. By aggressively trying to silence our negative experiences, we inadvertently amplify them. The harder we try to push the stress away, the louder it screams, trapping us in this vicious, draining cycle of self-judgment.
So, how do we break out of this exhausting trap? Well, the counterintuitive solution here is to stop trying to fix the feeling entirely. When you constantly chase positive feelings, you're ironically engaging in a highly negative experience. Why? Because the relentless pursuit of happiness constantly reinforces what you currently lack. Every single time you tell yourself you need to be happier, you're just reminding yourself that you aren't happy enough right now. The path to actually feeling better doesn't start with forcing a smile or demanding positivity from yourself. It starts with strictly evaluating what gets your attention in the first place. You have to learn to accept the discomfort of the moment, sit with it, and ask yourself a very sobering question. Is what you're focusing on right now actually worth the mental toll it's taking on you?
And this brilliantly illustrates a really important concept. Think of your energy, your attention, and your emotional investment as a highly limited currency. Every single day you're spending it. You spend it on your work, your personal relationships, the traffic on your commute, or what random people on the internet think of you. Most of us go through life spending this currency like we're incredibly rich, throwing our emotional energy at every minor inconvenience. But we aren't emotional billionaires. Our capacity to care is finite. A teenager spends this currency recklessly, caring about every little thing, every rumor, and every perceived slight. But maturity isn't about learning how to care more. It's about fiercely protecting your emotional energy and choosing to spend it only on the few things that are deeply meaningful to you.
The real challenge for you as a high performer isn't figuring out how to completely turn off your emotions and stop caring altogether. That's impossible, and frankly, it's kind of sociopathic. The goal is making a deliberate, highly strategic shift in your mindset. Whenever you're faced with a new stressor, an unexpected demand on your time, or just a sudden annoyance, you need to hit pause and ask yourself, is this worth caring about? You simply cannot care about everything. Trying to do so is a guaranteed recipe for burnout and emotional exhaustion. Instead, you've got to deliberately decide where to invest your highly valuable emotional attention. Treat that short list of things you care about like an elite investment portfolio and protect it fiercely.
Now, this next concept might sting a little, but stay with me here. Let's talk about the entitlement trap. So many of us have been raised on a diet of you can do anything and you were born for absolute greatness. But believing you're automatically entitled to a remarkable, pain-free life without actually putting in remarkable effort, that creates massive psychological suffering. This entitlement causes a severe disconnection from reality, where every minor setback feels like a catastrophic injustice. True freedom, on the other hand, comes from accepting that you're entirely ordinary in most things. And hey, that isn't a defeat. Accepting your ordinariness frees you from the exhausting daily performance of pretending to be exceptional at everything. It allows you to drop the ego and actually put in the focused, grueling work required to become genuinely great at the one or two things that truly matter to you.
This brings us to a critical leadership tool: radical responsibility. There's a massive, fundamental difference between fault and responsibility, and understanding this distinction literally changes everything. Think about trauma, challenging economic circumstances, or just plain bad luck. You didn't choose those things. They were handed to you, and they are absolutely not your fault. but your agency, your choices, your growth, those belong to you. While you might not be at fault for the difficult circumstances dropped into your lap, you are entirely 100% responsible for fixing them and moving forward. Great leaders don't waste time arguing about whose fault the storm is. They take responsibility for steering the ship. Taking ownership of your life, even the broken parts you didn't break, is the single most empowering move you can make.
This leads us to one of the most honest and profound questions you're ever going to encounter in self-improvement. What pain do you want in your life? What are you truly willing to struggle for? Notice that this doesn't ask what shiny reward you want at the finish line. That's the easy part. Everyone wants the thriving 7-figure business, the amazing physique, the perfect relationship, and the absolute freedom to travel the world. But not everyone wants the 60-hour work weeks, the sleepless nights, the grueling daily discipline, and the agonizing rejection that comes attached to those rewards. The true quality of your life isn't determined by the glamorous highs you chase. It's determined by the specific brand of suffering you're willing to endure to get there. Purpose lives in the process, not the prize. Let that truth sink in for a moment. If you stop asking, what do I want, and start asking, what am I willing to struggle for, the answer will reveal your true underlying values, rather than just your surface-level fantasies. For example, if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to fall in love with the struggle of taking risks, facing failure, and dealing with uncertainty. If you aren't willing to endure that specific pain, then entrepreneurship isn't your actual purpose. It's just a daydream. Discovering exactly what is worth suffering for is how you find real meaning in your life.
Let's move to and see how this builds into daily practice. How do we actually make these our daily habits? The source material distills these concepts down to 5 actionable lessons that you can start applying immediately. Step 1 is fundamental. Stop trying to feel good all the time. Remember, the relentless pursuit of constant positivity is the actual problem, not the solution. Allow yourself to feel frustrated or angry when the situation calls for it. Step 2, choose your struggles wisely. You don't get a free pass to a life without pain, so you have to be highly strategic. You only get to pick which pain is actually worth your time and energy. Don't waste your struggle on toxic relationships or unfulfilling work.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the realization that your values actually determine your problems. And this is step 3. If you operate on bad values, you're setting yourself up for endless, agonizing suffering because these values are reliant on external factors completely outside of your control. Take a bad value like a relentless need for everyone's approval. If that's your core value, your daily problems will consist of agonizing over every text message, constantly shape-shifting to please others, and feeling totally crushed when someone inevitably dislikes you. It's an unwinnable game. But if you anchor yourself to good values, like honesty, continuous personal growth, or contribution to your community, you create meaningful problems. A good value like honesty might create the problem of having a difficult, uncomfortable conversation with a business partner. But solving that problem actually strengthens the relationship and builds your character. Good values create problems that are fulfilling to solve.
Rounding out the 5 lessons we have, step 4, be wrong sometimes. The willingness to question your own deeply held beliefs and publicly admit your mistakes isn't a sign of weakness. It's the absolute prerequisite for growth. If you're terrified of being wrong, you'll never take the necessary risks to improve. And finally, step 5, act first, feel motivated later. This is a real game changer. So many of us wait around to feel inspired, to feel fully energized, or to feel totally prepared before we begin a difficult task. But motivation doesn't spark action. Action sparks motivation. Clarity doesn't arrive before you start, it's generated by the momentum of starting. You don't need to feel ready. You just need to take the smallest possible step right now, and the motivation will follow.
To tie all of this together, Manson closes his philosophy with a deeply sobering yet incredibly powerful concept: death. Mortality is not morbid, it's deeply motivating. When you truly accept that your time on this earth is finite and constantly ticking down, the trivial, everyday annoyances instantly stop mattering. The petty arguments with strangers online, the obsession over a minor mistake at work, the paralyzing fear of being judged by people you barely know, all of it instantly shrinks in the face of your inevitable mortality. Confronting death strips away the superficial layers and gives your life an undeniable urgency and sharp focus.
Death is the ultimate filter for your fucks. Confronting our mortality isn't something to hide from or aggressively avoid. It is the ultimate clarifier. When you deeply accept that your time here is limited, precious, and non-negotiable, you naturally stop wasting it on things that simply do not matter. It snaps everything right into perspective. Knowing that the clock is ticking is the absolute best reason to give serious, deliberate attention only to the right things, the right people, and the right struggles.
So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. What are you going to choose to struggle for today?
Life isn't about magically feeling great all the time. It's about deliberately choosing what is worth feeling bad about. Stop trying to figure out how to care less about everything, and start giving deliberate, fiercely focused attention to the right things. Take radical responsibility for your choices and your leadership. If this strategic briefing resonated with you, I highly recommend picking up the source book to dive even deeper into these concepts. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you on the next one.